The Psychology of People Who Love Staying at Home, Francis. Wheeler was 64 years old, and she had a secret that people in her life did not fully understand. She was happiest at home, not because she was afraid of the world, not because she was sad or broken or hiding from something, but because home was where she felt most completely herself, Francis had lived in the same house for 31 years, a modest, two-story colonial with a deep porch and flower beds that she tended like old friends. Every room held something she loved. The kitchen, with its copper pots hanging above the stove, the reading corner in the living room where afternoon light fell just so across the chair, the garden visible through the back windows where birds came every morning without fail, when people asked Francis what she had done over the weekend, she would smile and say she had stayed home, and she would watch their faces do that particular thing. The slight confusion, the polite concern, the way they searched for something to say that would not sound like pity, Did you not want to go out? Were you not lonely? You should get out more. Francis, it would do you good. Francis had heard these things her whole life. She had spent years trying to explain something that felt as natural to her as breathing, but the world was suspicious of people who preferred the quiet life, who chose their own company and their own space over the constant motion of going out and doing things. Francis was not a hermit, She had friends she loved, a daughter named Christine, who visited every other Sunday, a neighbor named Rose, who came for tea on Thursdays, a gay book club she attended once a month because she loved the books, even if the going out part required some gathering of energy, but given the choice between a busy Saturday out in the world and a quiet Saturday at home, Francis chose home every single time without regret. This had not always been understood, her late husband Gerald had been the opposite, social and energetic, always wanting to be somewhere, doing something, He had loved her deeply, but he had also spent 30 years gently trying to get her off the porch. Come on, Franny, just for a little while, it will be fun, Sometimes she would go, and sometimes it was fun, but she always felt the relief washing over her when they came home again, when the door closed behind them and the quiet settled around her like a warm blanket. After Gerald passed away 5 years ago, people had worried. They had assumed Francis would be desperately lonely, would need to be kept busy, would need to be pulled out into the world. What they did not understand was that Francis had a rich life inside her home, Her mornings began slowly, coffee on the porch, watching the day arrive, birds at the feeder, the particular quality of early light on the garden, Then there was the reading. Francis read voraciously. 3 or 4 books a week, depending on their length, history and fiction, and poetry and memoirs. She read with the deep pleasure of someone who considers it not a pastime, but a conversation with all of humanity across all of time. She baked bread on Tuesdays, not because she needed bread, but because the process of kneading and waiting, and the smell of it filling the house was one of the small ceremonies that gave her days shape and meaning. She wrote letters on good paper with a fountain pen she had owned for 20 years. To Christine and 2 old friends scattered across the country, to a pen pal in New Zealand named Dorothy, whom she had never met in person, but who was one of the most important friendships of her life. She tended her garden, talked to her plants without embarrassment, watched the seasons move through her backyard with the attention of someone for whom this was not background scenery, but genuine theater, Francis's daughter. Christine had worried about her mother after Gerald died, she had suggested activities in clubs and online dating, and Francis had listened patiently and said thank you, and done none of them. One Sunday visit, Christine sat down across from her mother with the careful expression of someone who had been rehearsing something. Mom, I am worried you are isolating yourself. Francis poured the tea and considered her daughter with affection. Tell me what you mean by that. You never go anywhere. You never do anything, I do many things, Francis said gently. You know what I mean? You never go out. Christine, my love, Francis said, going out is not the only way to have a full life's But are you happy, Mom? Are you really happy? Francis thought about this morning, the first cup of coffee in the quiet kitchen, finish all night, the loaf of bread cooling on the counter, The letter she had started to Dorothy about the novel she had just finished, asterisk. She thought about the afternoon ahead, the garden waiting, the sunlight already warm on the back beds, asterisk, the comfortable chair, and the continued novel, the quiet that was not emptiness, but fullness. Yes, she said simply, I am genuinely happy. Christine did not look entirely convinced, but she was beginning to understand something, asterisk, that happiness did not have to look the way the world expected it to, asterisk. Frances had a friend named Barbara who had moved to the neighborhood 3 years ago, asterisk. Barbara was 68 and the direct opposite of Frances. She volunteered everywhere. Understand why anyone would stay home when there was so much happening out in the world, asterisk. They had become friends anyway, the way opposites sometimes do when they recognize something genuine in each other. One afternoon, Barbara came for tea and found Frances transplanting seedlings in the garden, asterisk. How do you do it? Barbara asked, watching her do what. Be so content here, just here in this house and garden. Frances sat back on her heels and thought about this. I think, she said, it is because I have never confused busyness with meaning. Barbara was quiet. Meaning is here for me. Frances continued, in the bread and the books and the letters and the garden, in small doses and in the right settings. She gestured toward the porch. When Rose comes on Thursday, or when you come for tea, I am fully present for it because I have spent the rest of the week filling up my own well. Barbara considered this. Think I run from quiet, she admitted. It makes me anxious, asterisk, that is worth understanding. Frances said gently, asterisk. The truth that Frances had come to know about herself over 64 years was this. Was often too much for her, too loud, too stimulating, asterisk. Too full of other people's emotions, which she absorbed without meaning to. Home was where she could regulate, where she could be herself, without performing, asterisk, where she could rest from the constant input of being in the world. This was not weakness, it was simply how she was built, asterisk. And she had spent too many years thinking it was something she needed to fix, asterisk. In her 40s, she had read everything she could find about introversion, about sensitivity, about the deep need some people had for solitude, asterisk. And she had recognized herself on every page, asterisk. She had wept with relief to understand that she was not broken, asterisk. Just different, just wired for the interior life rather than the external one, she had written. In her journal that night, asterisk, I am not refusing life. I am living it on my own terms. That phrase had become a kind of anchor for her. Frances's neighbor Rose was also a homebody, but for different reasons, asterisk. Rose was 72 and had agoraphobia that she had fought her whole life. Coming for tea on Thursdays was an act of genuine courage for Rose. I envy you, Rose said one Thursday. You stay home because you love it, not because you are afraid, asterisk. You are braver than you know, Frances replied. You show up even when it is hard, asterisk, but you are content, Rose said. I am just managing, asterisk. Frances thought about this. Asterisk, would it help? She asked to think of your home not as where you are trapped, but as where you are safe. Rose looked at her. What? Rose was quiet for a long time. I have never thought of it as a sanctuary, asterisk. It is both for me, Frances said. I choose it and I cherish it, and it holds me, asterisk. Can a place really hold you, asterisk? Oh yes, Frances said with certainty. Places hold us all the time, we just do not always notice. Christine came for her Sunday visit in October, when the garden was at its autumn best. She found her mother on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, watching the light move across the maples, asterisk. It is beautiful, Christine said, sitting beside her, asterisk. It is different every day, Frances replied. I have watched it for 31 years, and it is never exactly the same, asterisk. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of silence that is itself a form of love. I have been thinking about what you said, Christine offered, about being happy. And I believe you now, Christine said. I used to worry because you were so different from what I expected, but I think you have always known something. I am still learning. What is that you do not have to go looking for a good life, Christine said. If you have built one around you. Frances felt her eyes fill with tears. Gerald never quite understood that either, she said, but he loved me anyway, asterisk, he used to tell me. Christine said with a smile that you were the only person he knew who could make staying home feel like an adventure. Frances laughed a warm private laugh, asterisk. Was not wrong, asterisk, when Christine left that evening. Frances stood on the porch in the early dark, asterisk. The neighborhood was settling into night sounds, the particular peace of a Sunday evening. She thought about the week ahead: Tuesday bread, Thursday tea. With Rose the book, she was halfway through the letter to Dorothy. She would finish tomorrow. The garden that still needed a few things before winter. A simple week, a full week. Frances Wheeler was 64 years old, and she loved staying home. Not because the world was too much, though sometimes it was. It's not because she was afraid of missing out, because she was not, but because she had built a life of such genuine texture and warmth within her walls and her garden and her carefully chosen routines that going out always felt like leaving something behind rather than finding something new. This is a story about knowing yourself, about honoring the life that fits you rather than performing the life others expect. About the deep quiet pleasure of being exactly where you want to be. Some people are made for the road, for crowds and adventure and constant motion, and that is beautiful and right for them. But some people are made for the hearth. For the slow pleasures of familiar things, for the depth that comes from going inward rather than outward. Frances was one of those people. She had finally, after 64 years, stopped apologizing for it. Her home was not a retreat from life. It was the place where her life most fully happened, where she was most completely herself, where the morning light and the bread and the books and the letters and the garden and the birds and the silence all conspired to make something ordinary into something precious. Frances went inside as the evening cooled. Put the kettle on, opened her book, settled into her chair, and felt the particular happiness of a person who has come home not just to a house, but to herself.